This is the video nobody asked for, but I wanted to make, so here we are anyways. So at the beginning of this year, I did a video on the most popular science fiction novels available on Kindle Unlimited, and from there I ended up reading the Trespass collection. Another Amazon original collection that I found in those most popular science fiction books on Kindle Unlimited was the Forward collection, and I wasn't sure at the time if I was going to read through all of them or not. Fast forward to now, I've finished the whole Forward collection, and while I thought the Trespass collection was just amazing and kind of blew me away, the Forward collection was a lot more mixed. So I thought it would be worthwhile to do a quick review of each one of these books, and then for us maybe to consider why the Trespass collection worked so well, where the Forward collection is just kind of like okay. Starting up with number 1 is going to be Arc by Veronica Roth. For those who don't know, Veronica Roth is the author of the Divergent series, so I was really curious to see if this new, more adult novella would connect with me in a way that Divergent hadn't. On Goodreads, Arc is sitting with a 3.56 star rating with 16,619 ratings and 1,579 reviews. I personally gave it about 3 stars, so I think the overall rating is accurate. I was tempted to give it a little bit lower, like a 2-star rating. In the end, decided that the overall writing quality bumped it up a little bit. Arc as a story is pretty contrived. It obviously thinks that the idea it's presenting is like thoughtful and revolutionary and something that like a reader would want to sit and mull with. Maybe it even thinks that it's giving me unique and dynamic facts about orchids, which like unfortunately for Arc, I really like the orchid flower and knew all of the facts and was generally 100% disinterested in what it was delivering. Also, the whole concept of the Ark, like storing all of the DNA and samples of different Earth creatures for when we settle on another planet. I don't know, I don't think I am as concerned about legacy as some science fiction writers would like me to be. I mean, if we're in a situation where we have to escape the Earth because of like a comet or a meteor or whatever, and everything is going to die out and there's no hope, I really just don't want to waste my time collecting everything. I want to get what I need and get out of Dodge and discover new things on another planet that I can enjoy just as much or maybe more. I want to look forward and learn new things instead of like holding on to everything from Earth that like was once great and amazing, but we're never going to be able to see in original context again ever. And that might be like highly invasive and detrimental to the planet and the environment we eventually settle on. So like from that standpoint, I didn't think the concept addressed any of that. And I also thought in a collection that's labeled the Forward collection, this like nostalgic sadness and like insistence on staying not even in the present, but like 3 steps back just didn't work. They were really specific about who was allowed to be a collection person on the Ark, and it had to be someone who was orphaned and who had no significant others. I thought that was like hella stupid too, because you could certainly have had whole families stay and do these Ark projects together. You didn't need them to have no human connections and to be a little bit lonely and sad. For that reason, like if we were talking about specifically storytelling elements and even character building elements, I'd probably end up giving the Arc a 2 or maybe a 1 star. But overall, the writing was compact. It wasn't a very long story, which helped it a lot, because if this had been a full-length novel, never in a million years would it be rating it a 3 star. And I do want to take a moment to compare this to Trespasses, The Tiger Came Down from the Mountain, because I loved that and gave it 5 stars and thought it was a perfect introduction to how we were going to weave wilderness and human elements together to make a compelling and interesting story. Meanwhile, this is doing the opposite of what looking forward should do for you, creating like this dramatic, melancholy, sad element that's really contrived. It didn't have to be this way. Tonally, I don't think this story makes sense. So for that reason, I found it to be specifically disappointing, both as a story, as an intro to a collection, and as an entry in this collection at all. Next is going to be Summer Frost by Blake Crouch. On Goodreads, it's sitting at a 4.09 star rating with 17,990 ratings and 1,979 reviews. I gave this a 4-star rating too. I think if we were discussing everything I'd ever read in the world, this is probably closer to like a 3.5 star than a 4-star rating. Summer Frost is the idea that a video game NPC has somehow gained sentience. They pull it out of the video game and start trying to develop that sentience and a sense of morality and learning in it for positive good for humanity. I found the conversations to be really interesting between the AI and the human character. I didn't particularly care for every element of this story. There were just a lot of things in it that I disagreed with, but I thought that the main character was compelling. I thought the way that this character was portrayed and how they were responding to things made sense for them. And I thought the way that the AI sort of played a little bit of a long game with all of the characters was kind of interesting too. While this still isn't giving me like a spacefaring humanity going into the stars kind of feel, it is at least progressing technology to like the next feasible step and discussing how we as a species might interact with it. So it's fitting thematically. Overall, I would say Summer Frost is a pretty good read and worth your time. Next is going to be Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin. This is sitting at a 4.05 star rating from 22,582 ratings, 2,751 reviews on Goodreads. I gave this 5 stars and I loved it. This is far and away the best thing in the forward collection. For starters, we're finally in space and talking about space travel and colonizing other planets and creating societies different from the Earth society. Also, this story started out weird and a little bit off-putting and became more inviting and hopeful the further in you went. This is also a story where you walked away feeling really good about humanity and our chances and where we're going as a species and what we can do to get there. When so far the other 2 books in the series have been pretty Debbie Downer-ish. If we're comparing this to the Trespass collection, I think this is where Stephen Graham Jones' entry into the collection was, and that was also like a happy, hopeful sort of story transformed from something that's usually more horror themed. I think the third is a great place to like put an inflection point and turn things a little. I do think Emergency Skin went on just a little bit too long. It probably could have been a couple pages shorter, but overall, I really enjoyed it. And this is my first thing I've read by N.K. Jemisin, and it was such a wonderful and upbeat and entertaining introduction to her writing that I'm definitely interested in reading more from her in the future. Next is going to be You Have Arrived at Your Destination by Amor. Towles. This is sitting at a 3.47 star rating with 17,189 ratings and 1,543 reviews. I ended up giving this one about a 2 star. When I first read the summary, I was really interested in this particular story. I thought it had a lot of potential to be fun and to be saying something and doing something interesting and unique. And when I got into it, I just found that the premise had kind of been transformed into something that was pretty joyless. All the character descriptions and personalities and actions were really well done, and the premise was fine enough, but I just didn't enjoy this execution of it. I wish there was more I could say because this has some really good writing in it, but it kind of left me feeling like cold and disinterested when I was done. And something about this whole forward collection that I didn't find in the Trespass collection is none of these short stories have stuck with me. They're not things that I think about. For me, anthologies and short story collections especially need to have that thinking, remembering it idea kind of factor. The whole collection is just super bland when it comes to that. This story in particular should have been something that I thought about for a long time afterwards and should have been very engaging, like for my personality and interest level. I forgot it almost like as soon as I was done reading it. It was so bland and meh for me that I didn't even remember to mark it as read on my Goodreads spreadsheet. Number 5 is going to be The Last Conversation by Paul Tremblay. It's sitting at a 3.75 star rating with 13,267 ratings and 1,326 reviews. Personally, I hated this. I just thought it was awful. I ended up reading it 3 stars because it's written in the second person and it's a great attempt at a second person short story. Second person is when the narrator uses you as the subject instead of they or I. So it sort of like forces you to immerse yourself in the story. And sometimes this works really well and it creates high immersion and an investment in a reader. And sometimes it backfires and the reader finds it really off-putting or unsettling. In my case, I did not freaking relate at all to the you in this story. So the execution for me just fell on its face from the start. Beyond that, I didn't find the conversation between the you and the other character to be compelling in any way. It starts out and you, the character, are in significant pain and there's a doctor outside who's helping you or whatever. Slowly, as time passes and you go through several different conversations with them, you start to suspect that they aren't telling you the truth or that they're up to something or withholding something from you, and you become more and more fearful of them and more desperate to escape. I guess it's like an okay horror science fiction premise, but I just didn't enjoy it. For starters, I saw where it was going a mile away, and I didn't feel that the way that it was portrayed or imagined was very unique or different than other ways I'd seen this kind of premise presented, and I didn't think it was right, like in the sense that this is how things would go down or this is how perception would work. I guess it's an interesting experiment to like release your idea of what these technologies mean and sort of like go with what the narrator's saying, but there wasn't enough there for me to do that, and I was sort of like set in my own way of how to see things and couldn't really join the story on this journey. Like I said, I did end up giving it 3 stars, even though personally, as far as enjoyment goes, it's closer to like a 2 or a 1. The other thing about it is I have rated a lot of books that have been objectively bad books and given them 3 or 2 stars, and this book is not objectively bad even though I didn't like it. So it's very hard for me to put it in like a 2 or a 1 star category just because I disliked it, when like technically it was doing so many interesting things. It had great grammar and formatting and construction, and the pacing is decent. It's a little slow, if I'm going to be totally honest. It felt very lengthy in a couple of places, and I also found some of the time jumps a little bit jarring. But that still sits at a 3 star because of the quality of writing, even though I didn't like any of it. And as you can see right now, I am on book 5. I have 1 more, maybe 2 more books to go over. And you can see that as far as I'm concerned, the forward collection was really unpleasant to read and hard to get through. And that was not at all my experience in the Trespass collection. It's just really interesting how different these 2 Amazon original science fiction collections sort of hit me, and which one I was willing to go with and which one I found very disenchanting, I guess. So the last book in this collection is going to be Randomize by Andy Weir. It's sitting at a 3.5 star rating out of 20,181 ratings and 1,733 reviews on Goodreads. I think I gave this one 4 stars. This was fun. It was in the top 10 most popular books on Kindle Unlimited science fiction on Amazon. And when I looked at it, I mentioned that I was hoping for a little bit of that fun, flirty, heist, Ocean's 11 kind of vibe. And it delivered a little bit of that. Just enough that I was kind of satisfied with it. Some of the other stuff less so. The characters were kind of fun, even though they weren't fully rounded people. I was happy to go with them for a little bit and just to enjoy their big personality, even though it didn't make 100% sense. It's definitely not one that I would think about later, and I don't actually think that it fits super well into the theming of a forward collection. Yes, that's a new step in technology. Yes, we're talking about new tech making it possible to cheat in gambling, and then that same new tech stopping casinos from losing all their money. Technically, it fits the writing prompt and the theming of the novella, but it just feels so much like a same shit, different day style story. It's hard to think about it as the future or making a quick jump a few steps into the future. Yeah, so I think overall I have a couple of takeaways from this experiment. First of all, the Trespass collection might be special and unique among the Amazon original collections. I still want to read the Black Stars collection, and I'm in the middle of the Dark Corners collection. But based off of my experience with Dark Corner so far, I have to say it's more likely that Trespass is just a special exception. Additionally, it seemed to me like authors put different level of effort into these short stories and these different collections. I really did enjoy some of the things that we read in Forward Collection. N.K. Jemisin in specific stands out as like the showrunner of everything, but it felt like a little bit lazy, like the writers were letting their name brand recognition and their technical proficiency in their craft like do the heavy lifting instead of like coming up with interesting concepts or compelling characters. And I think one more thing that's important to recognize is like I specifically want to read short stories that get me thinking and that introduce me to new and compact ideas, concepts, and characters. And if you're just looking for something to like entertain you for like an hour, then maybe the Forward Collection is more successful for you than it was for me. Anyways, that was my experience with the Forward Collection. It's two different Amazon original series that were both on the top 10 of the Kindle Unlimited Sci-Fi when I did my TBR list way back in March. And very different experiences, even though the books were rated and were being read and reviewed as like similar in quality, same publisher, and same kind of like mixture of like famous authors. You know, I was just fascinated by how different the experience was between the two collections. But tell me, do you prefer like a humanity versus nature kind of story or humanity versus technology kind of story? Let me know in those comments down below. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep reading. Bye!